When we start to dive into some of these team previews in the Big Ten, you got to start with the big boys. There are three teams at the top of the Big Ten that I think are clearly deeper, that are clearly more talented, that are clearly the contenders. When we talk about the Big Ten winning their third consecutive national champion, these are the three teams I think that we're thinking of. The Penn State Nittany Lions, the Ohio State Buckeyes, and the Oregon Ducks. You're talking about the defending national champion in Ohio State. You're talking about the defending Big Ten champion in Oregon. And you're talking about the team that is predicted to win the Big Ten this season, and that is the Penn State Nittany Lions. Let's begin with James Franklin and the Penn State Nittany Lions. You know, when you talk about James Franklin, what's the first thing that comes up? Guy can't win the big game. Guy can't win the big game. He can't get over that hump. He's a really good coach, but he's maybe not a great coach. Well, this year, if it's not now, it might not ever happen in Happy Valley, Pennsylvania, because this is a year where Penn State is absolutely loaded. They are bringing everybody back. They are in the mold of 2023 Michigan before them. They are in the mold of 2024 Ohio State before them, where they have a clear motivation, they have a clear purpose, and they have a whole ton of experience returning, and they might have the best group of coordinators in college football. You already had Andy Kotelnicki, who proved what he can do with this offense last season, calling plays. And then, you just steal Jim Knowles, maybe the best defensive coordinator in all of college football, from the Ohio State Buckeyes. A star-studded coaching staff. There is absolutely no doubt about that. Now, when we talk about these returning players and everybody running it back one more year to try to bring that championship to Central Pennsylvania, you start, of course, with the quarterback, Drew Aller. He was third in the Big Ten in passing last season. He's the top returning passer in the conference, over 3,200 yards, 24 touchdowns, and 8 interceptions. I think the thing that I want to see from Drew a little bit more this year is just that great to elite level consistency. I want him playing towards that Heisman type of level every single time that he goes out on a college football field. We've seen him play really good games throughout his career, specifically last season, but then you see some of these games like last year against Ohio State, right, where he just couldn't get anything going. A lot of credit goes to the Buckeye defense, Jim Knowles, during that specific contest. But what do we know? If Penn State wants to get over that hump, you play against a really good opponent, or Penn State's going to play two of them, home against Oregon and at Penn State this year. You need to show and you need to prove that you can beat them, that you can make the plays in crunch time to be able to make that happen. And it all starts with the quarterback as the leader of the offense. Drew Aller needs to be that guy, certainly. I think Drew Aller is a lot in the mold of J.J. McCarthy in 2023, where this is going to be a very physical type of offense. They're going to lean on the run game, but that quarterback's going to have to make big plays down the field when they absolutely need them to be made. I talked about leaning on the run game. You would lean on the run game, too, if you had Nick Singleton and Katron Allen coming back. They both rushed for over 1,000 yards last season, combined for 20 touchdowns. I think if these guys were on separate teams, they'd probably both be Heisman candidates. I think they're that good. They're extremely talented running backs, but I think a reason why they're going to be great once again in this rushing attack is going to be great once again is you're returning 4 starters up front on the offensive line. Guys like Nick Dawkins at center, Nolan Rucci, Anthony Donkow, right, was a young guy that really played a lot of size, certainly up front. It is going to be very difficult for opposing defensive lines this year to be able to kind of match leverage with this group up front on the offensive line. Going to the passing game. Last year, it was all about the tight end position. It was all about Tyler Warren. And, of course, now he's playing in the National Football League. Over 1,200 yards and 8 scores last season. And I think this year, the passing game really has to. It has to transfer from being tight end centric. Now, Jaleel Dankins, Luke Reynolds, they're certainly going to be involved in this offense, but it's got to transfer over to these wide receivers able to get open consistently and make plays. Harrison Wallace is gone. He's transferring to Ole Miss. Amari Evans is gone. He's transferring to Washington. I mean, let's call a spade. Julian Fleming was a great perimeter blocker, and that's about it. So you lose those three guys. You go to the portal. That's exactly what Penn State needed to do at wide receiver to try to replace that. Trevor Pena comes over from Syracuse. He was a part of the college football's best passing offense last year with the Orange over there. Over 900 yards and 9 touchdowns in that offense. Kyron Hudson, a veteran sure-handed receiver from USC. Over 400 yards, 3 scores with the Trojans last year. Devontae Ross is that burner and that perimeter playmaker that they are looking to step up. Over 1,000 yards and 11 touchdowns at the group of 6 level at Troy last year. These 3 combined for over 2,400 yards and 23 touchdowns at their respective schools. I don't think they're going to put up that type of production. If they put up that type of production, yeah, Penn State's going to be sitting real good, especially with what they got at quarterback with what I mentioned before. But I think like maybe the biggest key to this offense is those 3 wide receivers need to be able to be playmakers, because if you have a defense that can at least, go toe to toe with Penn State in the trenches and maybe at least slow down the run game, then the ball gets put into the hands of Drew Aller and this offense. You need to be able to beat you. You need to be able to win in multiple ways. What I said about Michigan, they can beat you any way they choose to beat you. Penn State needs to be able to be that team this season. You go over to the defensive side of the football. I mentioned Jim Knowles is coming in as the defensive coordinator, and he's got a lot to work with, certainly, this season. Now, you're going to lose Abdul Carter to the National Football League, and that is a big loss. He was one of the best pass rushers in college football over the last couple of seasons, but you got Dennis Sutton coming back. 13 tackles for loss, 8.5 sacks. Last season. Zane Durant is on that defensive line as well. But the rest of the defensive line, you need to find ways to kind of, you're not going to replicate with one guy what Abdul Carter did. But as a group, I think you need to kind of be able to kind of match that production as best you can up front. But I feel really good about what Penn State has up front on the defensive line. I think the linebacker room is really solid, even despite the loss of Kobe King. Tony Rojas and Dom DeLuca combined for 98 tackles and 10 tackles for loss last season. Amari Campbell transfers in from North Carolina. He's got like 76 tackles, 6.5 sacks last season. So I think that room is really solid. I think it's really good. Right? I feel really good about that one. I feel really good about the first 2 levels. Secondary, like if there's a little bit of a weak point for the Nittany Lions, I think the secondary, you could maybe throw that out there. They lose Jalen Reed, who was their leading tackler at safety, 98 tackles and 3 picks. They retain Zakee Wheatley, who was all Big Ten honorable mention last year. A.J. Harris is back yet again at corner. He is all Big Ten third team. I think in the secondary, you're looking for Elliott Washington and Zion Tracy to really be expected to fill the gaps. Elliott made 1 start last season. Zion Tracy made 4 starts last season. So how are teams going? I think teams that are going to have the best chance to kind of go and play well against Penn State are going to be the teams that are going to be explosive on the outside. I'm looking like at a team like an Oregon. I'm looking at a team like an Indiana that could maybe have that type of effect on this Penn State team. But there's no doubt about it. This is I think the team for good reason that's number 1 in the Cleveland.com poll. This is a team that's really deep in a lot of places. This is a team that's really experienced in a lot of places as well. Now it's just up to, can they win the big one? And if you don't do it in the regular season, can you make an Ohio State-style run towards a national championship as well? All right, let's move on to the defending national champions, and let's talk about the Ohio State Buckeyes. Boy, when you go out and you win a title, you lose your coordinators, and you usually lose a lot of guys to the National Football League. That's exactly what's happening here with the Ohio State Buckeyes. Let me just list off some of the names, some of the players that they are going to be losing this year. Quarterback Will Howard, running backs Quinshawn Judkins and Trevion Henderson, wide receiver Emeka Ibuka, their entire defensive line, Sawyer, JTT, Ty Hamilton, and Tyleik Williams, Cody Simon, a triple-digit leading tackler, Lathan Ransom in the secondary, deep breath, and the list goes on and on. Their offensive coordinator, Chip Kelly, leaves to be the offensive coordinator under Pete Carroll in the NFL with the Las Vegas Raiders. As I mentioned before, defensive coordinator Jim Knowles he's off to Happy Valley, Pennsylvania. So, but here's the thing, folks. You wear the scarlet and gray, you put the Buckeye leaves on your helmet. What does that mean? It means you got a lot of depth. It means you got 4-star and 5-star guys on the second team. It means you got them on the third team, and Ohio State is certainly going to get the chance to be able to prove that this season. I think Ohio State is going to be in every single game and is going to have a chance to win every single game on their schedule, which we know are the expectations in Columbus because they have the best 2 players in college football on either side of the coin. Jeremiah Smith is an alien. He is not of this world. Over 1,300 yards and 15 touchdowns as a true freshman. Caleb Downs, look at that play that he made in the semifinals against Texas last season. These are 2 guys that can single-handedly impact a game, and that is tough to do. That is tough to do from their positions on a football field. Let's talk about quarterback, because we got a battle going on through spring. We got a battle here going on into fall camp. Julian Sayin is a 5-star quarterback that seems to be the bet that is house money, right? He seems to be the favorite in this group. But Lincoln Kienholz has certainly been able to push him right now. I think either quarterback, it doesn't matter who it is, I could play quarterback for the Ohio State Buckeyes next season, and I could probably have a pretty good chance to put up some good numbers because you are going to go with the aforementioned Jeremiah Smith to throw the football to. Carnell Tate, over 700 yards and 4 touchdowns last season. You got Brandon Innes, who's he was a top 5 wide receiver in his class when he came out. So he was highly rated, right? We just know how Ohio State just churns out these top level wide receivers. So you are going to have a young quarterback, that's for sure. But when you're able to throw to these types of players, it's going to make you look really good. Maybe better, maybe further along than you actually are at that point in time. But I would favor Sayin to be the quarterback in Columbus, Ohio. And then they have maybe as good of a tight end as they've had in a while. I know they had Cade Stover a couple of years ago, but Max Clare, he was the top tight end in the portal, number 15 overall player in the portal, over 600 yards, 4 touchdowns at Purdue last season. Tall, athletic, pass-catching tight end. So with Clare and Smith and Tate and Innes, I don't know. I do not know how you defend all of these guys on the football field. It is going to be truly pick your poison. So the quarterback just has to be able to make the right decision. He's got to be able to make the quick decision. So I think whoever is able to do that best through in fall camp is probably going to be named the starter when they play the Texas Longhorns to kick off the season. Ohio State loses 3 starters up front on the offensive line, but brought in 2 really good transfers. You know, some of those started. McLaughlin, of course, he was kind of banged up last year. Donovan Jackson, Josh Fryer as well. They bring in Phillip Daniels, who transfers in from Minnesota. Ethan Anianwa, hope I got that right, transfers over from Rice. So this is an offensive line when they had to go through some injuries. They shuffled some things around, had some troubles, but they finally got it together. The offensive line's ability to give Julian Sayin and these wide receivers routes time to develop is going to be an X factor, certainly, for this offense as well. I expect the Buckeye offense to be a lot more lenient and really lean more on the passing game. Because you got Brian Hartline is now going to be the offensive coordinator. He was the wide receivers coach. That's one. I just talked about the wide receivers and the immense talent that they have at that position, right? Those are their best players on offense and their best chance to put up points. And then when you look at the running backs, with Henderson and Judkins gone, you got James Peoples coming in. C.J. Donaldson transfers over from West Virginia, who's kind of more of a power back, hasn't rushed for over 1,000 yards in a season in his career. I think it's going to be more of a compliment, to be honest with you, when you look at this passing game. So offense, it's gonna be explosive. But if this is a team that, if you have defenses that can get after the quarterback, shorten the amount of time that they have for these routes to develop, maybe that could be a way to combat this offense a little bit. Knowing the run game isn't going to be as strong, most likely. Defense. Matt Patricia, the former New England Patriots defensive coordinator, the former Detroit Lions head coach, is coming into this thing. And I think when I start to look at the defense, I really like the secondary. Caleb Downs. What more can you say? An all-American player. He's a player that can, he's probably the best safety in college football. He's the best safety in the Big Ten in a conference loaded with really good safeties at the top. Davis Igbinosun is back. He was an all Big Ten honorable mention last year. Jermaine Matthews is coming back as well. And, he was one of those guys that was just kind of, a second team guy last season. Could have started on a lot of teams in college football, but he's been waiting his turn, and he's going to get the opportunity to really show what he can do. Keep an eye out for Devin Sanchez. He was the number 6 recruit in the country. He's a true freshman. Look, Jeremiah Smith certainly played a lot as a true freshman as well, but you got to be really good to play. I think Devin Sanchez is really good, and I think that he can certainly do that this season. They lose their leading tackler, Cody Simon, from the middle of the defense. He was a big part of that group. Sonny Styles, now is time for him to step up and be that linebacker leader that we've seen out of Ohio State recently. Remember Tommy Eichenberg, somebody like that. Arvell Reese and C.J. Hicks have opportunities to emerge. C.J. Hicks, he was a 5-star, top 20, 25 recruit. Maybe he was higher than that coming out of high school, and we haven't heard much from him. So we'll see if he can make some noise coming off the edge as well. It's going to be insanely difficult to replicate this experience on the defensive line that they're losing. The Sawyers, the JTTs, the Tylik Williams, the Ty Hamiltons that I talked about before. These are multi-year starters. Remember, what was that, 2 or 3 years ago, that JTT crazy game at Penn State? That seems like a lifetime ago, but it just shows you how long that him specifically and others have been involved in this defensive line rotation at a high level. Caden McDonald, Kenyatta Jackson, Caden Curry. Those guys are juniors and seniors that have played in the rotation, and they've seen some time. Bo Atkinson transfers in from North Carolina off the edge. He had 8 sacks last season. The defensive line was such a huge part to Ohio State's success. The defensive line holding up in that last drive against the Texas Longhorns. That was certainly huge to them being able to be able to advance and eventually win the national championship game. So, and we know the secondary is going to be very good, but that defensive line has got to find a way to. They're not going to be as good as last year. I think that's pretty obvious, but they've got to find a way to certainly be able to wreak some havoc this season. I'm really intrigued. I got a ton of belief in the offense for Ohio State. Defense is intriguing. It's very interesting, certainly to me, with all of the production that they are losing. No doubt Ohio State will be one of those top teams in college football, possibly contending for a Big Ten or maybe a second straight national championship. Let's move on to the West Coast, and let's talk about that team out west. Let's talk about the Oregon Ducks. Dan Lanning, he just keeps improving. Year after year after year, this is a team that just keeps on increasing their win total from 10 to 12 to 13 last year, running through the Big Ten Conference. But this year is going to be a test for the Ducks to see exactly how elite the Oregon program is and how well they can reload. This is really the first year where it's going to be a lot of Dan Lanning, heavily recruited guys on this roster. How has their talent evaluation been? How has their development been? We're going to find out a lot about that this year up there in Eugene. Now, I think the big news coming out of this spring in the Oregon news cycle was the injury to Evan Stewart. Evan Stewart was a receiver last year, over 600 yards and 5 touchdowns. That's going to set the Ducks back a little bit. And now you're going to have a wide open competition outside of DeCorian Moore. More on the Super Frosh here in a little bit as we continue talking about the Ducks. But now you're going to have all sorts of opportunities to be able to step up, and maybe some questions at wide receiver out there because, not only Evan Stewart, but you lose your other top 2 wide receivers, Tez Johnson and Trayshawn Holden. They combined for over 1,600 yards and 15 touchdowns. That's a lot of production to replace as well. All right, so let's talk about DeCorian Moore a little bit. We talked about Jeremiah Smith earlier, Ryan Williams at Alabama. These were true freshman wide receiver sensations. And now there is expectations and pressure on DeCorian Moore to be that dude from game number 1. You had Evan Stewart in this lineup. Okay, so maybe DeCorian can be that wide receiver too, and maybe there isn't as much pressure. Now, from day one, a guy that was playing high school football last year at Duncanville High School in the state of Texas, now he's going to be the guy that's going to be expected to be able to make plays right out the gate. You know who else is going to be expected to make plays? Kenyon Sadiq at tight end. This guy is an absolute super freak. He can do it all. He can block. He's gotten involved in the run game. He can catch the ball. He can line the ball. He can line up out wide. He can line up at the typical tight end position. He is going to be a problem. He will be one of the best tight ends in all of college football last year, just over 300 yards, 2 touchdowns. He's taking over for Terrence Ferguson, who had one of the best tight end careers in Oregon Duck history. Top 3 all time in a lot of statistical categories, career and single season. And yet, I think Oregon feels better at the tight end position with somebody like Kenyon Sadiq. Now, when you're talking about, okay, who could be some of those other wide receivers that could really step up for the Ducks? Malik Benson transfers in from Florida State. He had 311 yards and a touchdown with the Noles in Tallahassee last year. You got veteran guys Justice Lowe. Gary Bryant Jr. is a guy that was banged up due to injury last year, but he had over 400 yards and 4 touchdowns in 2023. I think he's a really good candidate to maybe take over for Tez Johnson at that slot position this season. Jeremiah McClellan, Jurion Dickey, Kyler Casper. I mean, these are guys with stars next to their name. Dickey was a former 5-star. McClellan was a former 4-star. I mean, like, these are all really good players. Now it's time for them to step up. It's a next man up mentality right now. Let's move to the quarterback position. Now, there is a quarterback battle going on through spring and now as we venture into fall camp between Dante Moore, the former 5-star and UCLA quarterback, and Austin Novosad, he was a 4-star quarterback of his own. And this is as good of a 1-2 quarterback position, I think, as there is in college football. The heavy favorite is Dante Moore. You've had, the expectations are just, you just got to get to New York City. You got to be a Heisman finalist. That's now what the bar is, operating in Will Stein's offense in Eugene, Oregon. And Dante Moore, I believe, has as high of a ceiling as they've had since maybe Justin Herbert. Do you go with the double M, Marcus Mariota? That's certainly rarefied air when we're talking about Duck quarterbacks. But Dante can do that, and I think he showed a lot of maturity by transferring in last season and sitting and learning. I think his year sitting and learning is going to be more beneficial than his year under Chip Kelly getting experience over there at UCLA. So I think that was a great cleanser last season. Word out of spring says he's got all the tools. He can make all the throws. That the hype is real. But can he do it on the football field? Because the last time we saw him, certainly a lot of inconsistencies his freshman year over there at UCLA. Now, Oregon back-to-back years has a Joe Moore Award finalist offensive lines. They've been great up front up there, but they lose 4 starters up front on this team. And then they went into the portal to get 3 offensive line guys. Josh Connerly Jr. was drafted in the first round of the NFL draft by the Washington Commanders. Ajani Cornelius was on the outside over there at tackle. There's a lot to replace. Iapane Lalaolu in there at center, also known as Pancho, is a guy that they're looking to anchor and is the only returner up front at center on this offensive line. Isaiah World was the top tackle in the transfer portal. They got him from Nevada. People are saying top 10, top 15 pick, maybe in next year's draft for him. Emmanuel Pranon transfers from USC. I think he was probably the best offensive lineman on the Trojans last season at guard. Alex Harkey transfers over from Texas State. I think he's a little bit better of a run blocker than he is a pass blocker, but these are all really big guys. They're all really good. We know when it comes to the offensive line, 5 have to play as one. So you got to be able to gel together. Oregon Duck fans know all about that, where there were kind of some shifting pieces early last season. So that is going to be a tremendous key. But I think these guys are experienced, and maybe it'll take them a little bit. Maybe it'll take them a couple of games. But I think this offensive line has a pretty high ceiling for this year. Now they're going to be blocking for what could maybe be the deepest Oregon running back room, backfield in a while, and that's saying something considering you've had Bucky Irving and Jordan James, who of course is departing. He had over 1,200 yards and 15 touchdowns for the Ducks last season. Mekhi Hughes transfers in from Tulane, over 2,700 yards, 22 touchdowns the last 2 years at Tulane. He was really the top running back prize in the transfer portal this year. Noah Whittington is back for his final year. He had 540 yards and 6 touchdowns last year. A healthy Noah Whittington, I think, is going to be a really good Noah Whittington. He was kind of recovering from an injury the first half of last year. Keep an eye out for Dewan Riggs, also known as Dink. He really flashed in that last game against Washington. So I think that this is going to be an offense that is really going to lean on the run game first, but I think they're going to have a hell of a passing attack with DeCorian Moore and Kenyon Sadiq as their main targets in this passing game as well. You flip over to Tosh Lupoi's defense for the Ducks. A lot of people talking about this defense as a top 10 ranked defense in all of college football, and there are guys at all three levels of the defense to be able to back that up. Mateo Uyunglele comes back at defensive end off the edge, led the Big Ten in sacks during the regular season. Bryce Betcher was an all Big Ten linebacker, 94 tackles and 8 TFLs last year. Dylan Thieneman, a former All-American safety, transfers in from Purdue. We talk about the great safeties in the Big Ten. He is right up there as a potential maybe first-round pick. Dylan Thieneman is as good of a guy as they've had at safety maybe since the days of Javon Holland recently. So that's a group that really needed an upgrade. The defensive line is replacing two guys that were drafted in the first 3 rounds of the draft. You're talking about Derek Harmon in the first, Jamari Caldwell in the third. But, man, this defensive line has some size. Amari Washington is coming back. He was in that rotation. He was that third guy in the middle for the Ducks last season. I'd expect him to have close to all Big Ten season. Bear Alexander transfers in from USC. Can Oregon get the most out of Bear? All the return so far is he's putting in the work that he needs to. Former 5-star at Georgia and USC. If he's playing at that all-conference level, good luck. Good luck against this team. Teon Gray, Terrence Green are other guys that will be in the rotation. They're 6'3", 6'4", 6'5", 320, 330. This is a Big Ten defensive line, folks. It might be, as a whole, the best defensive line in the Big Ten Conference right now. The secondary it's completely new alongside Dylan Thieneman. Theron Johnson transfers in from Northwestern. He was an all Big Ten guy there. Ife Obadegwu, Dalen Austin, Kingston Lopa are young players that I think they expect to be able to mold into starters as well. So I think this is a defense. It might take some time for them to kind of get their feet under them, considering how young of a team is. And I think that kind of goes to the offensive side of the ball as well. Oregon, I think, is a team to watch out for when we get to Game 9, Game 10, Game 11 to really start hitting their stride and to really start taking it to that next level. No doubt about it, these 3 teams are the best in the Big Ten. I'd be surprised if, number 1, these teams aren't playing, one of these teams isn't playing in the college football playoff, and number 2, 2 of these teams aren't playing for the Big Ten title.